Imagine this. You're stepping onto a high-speed train, maybe going hundreds of kilometers an hour. You're basically putting your life completely into the hands of the engineers, the signals, the staff running it all.
Yeah, it's an act of trust, really. We just assume everything's been checked, double-checked, signed off correctly.
Exactly. But what if the expert who signed off, the one who said, yep, the system is safe, what if they were highly qualified on paper, but maybe lacked that real deep competence, that judgment needed when something unexpected, maybe catastrophic happens?
That's the core issue, isn't it?
In the railway world, I mean, one mistake can have huge consequences. Lives derailed, massive damage, economies impacted. This reliance on people, it's the ultimate test.
It really is.
So our mission today in this deep dive is to get past the paperwork. How do we really make sure every single person involved in safety, from, say, the person working on the track right up to the boardroom, knows exactly what they're doing? And, maybe more importantly, knows when and how to apply that knowledge.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We're going to try and unpack exactly that critical difference between having skills, holding qualifications, and possessing that crucial thing we call competence in railway safety.
And this is vital stuff, especially if you're an engineering student listening or maybe just starting your career in safety. Understanding this is, well, it's fundamental.
Absolutely. It's your professional backbone.
And the law is pretty clear about the stakes, isn't it? There's this principle, SFARP.
Ah, SFARP.
Yeah.
Yes. So far as it reasonably practicable,
Right.
that underpins almost everything in railway safety, globally, really.
Yeah.
It puts a mandatory duty of care squarely on the operators. You can't transfer it.
So they have to ensure safety.
They legally have to show they've done everything reasonably practicable to eliminate or minimize risks, and demonstrating their staff are competent to manage those risks. That's non-negotiable. It's not a nice to have. It's fundamental to meeting that SFARP obligation. It's the engine driving that duty of care.
Okay, let's get into the definitions then. We throw around words like skills, qualifications, competence, sometimes interchangeably, but in safety engineering, they're distinct, right? How does the industry see competence specifically?
Yeah, they have to be precise. So competence isn't just one thing. It's a combination, you see. It's having the necessary skills, the right knowledge, and the relevant experience. All that comes together to allow someone to exercise sound professional judgment.
Judgment, that sounds key.
It is. Sound judgment when managing safety across the whole system's life. Think of it like this. A qualification might be your engineering degree. A skill could be knowing how to use a specific risk analysis tool.
Okay.
But competence, that's blending it all together. It's having the judgment to know, maybe, when sticking to the procedure isn't the safest option, or when you absolutely must stop a process because a hidden risk has emerged.
So it's not just having the knowledge, it's applying it effectively, especially when things get tricky.
Exactly that. Application under pressure, making the right call. And because judgment isn't static, it develops. Maintaining organizations need a structured way to handle it. That's where the Competency Management System, or CMS, comes in.
CMS.
Think of the CMS as the organizational blueprint for competence. It's a framework. It identifies what competencies are needed for every safety-critical role. Then it helps develop those competencies through training, assesses them rigorously, and this is crucial, continuously maintains and verifies them throughout someone's career.
It's interesting that this isn't a one-size-fits-all thing, though. You mentioned competence requirements differ depending on where you sit in the organization.
Oh, absolutely. It's a hierarchy. The type of competence needed changes quite dramatically as you go up the ladder.
So what about at the top, the executive or board level? They're not necessarily engineers.
Right. Their competence is strategic. They need a solid awareness of system safety assurance SSA issues. But their job isn't technical detail. It's oversight.
Asking the right questions.
Precisely. Asking the tough questions about risk appetite, ensuring enough resources are allocated to safety, making sure the people they authorize are competent. Their competence is in governing the safety culture and the CMS itself. They need to grasp the big picture risks and the consequences of getting it wrong.
Even if they can't do the detailed calculations themselves.
Exactly. Then you step down to managers. They need a bit more awareness of the SSA principles, particularly how they're implemented on the ground.
So more operational.
Yeah, their competence is in operational management, making risk-based decisions in their area, ensuring their teams have the tools, time, and budget needed, and making sure that CMS framework is actually being followed day to day.
Okay. And then we get to the people doing the hands-on safety work, like junior SSA practitioners. What's the baseline for them?
For juniors, the entry point is usually a relevant qualification, like an engineering degree. But there's a critical safeguard built in.
Which is?
All their work, every analysis, every report, must be reviewed and signed off by a senior qualified SSA lead. It's a structured pathway.
Ah, so they learn under supervision.
Exactly. They gain that vital experience, develop judgment, but under controlled conditions. It protects the system from rookie errors while building that pipeline of future excerpts. It's all about managed progression.
Okay, so who's the ultimate gatekeeper in this hierarchy? The role demanding the highest level of verifiable competence and, you mentioned, independence.
That would be the Independent Safety Assessor, the ISA.
Yeah.
The ISA provides that final, rigorous check. They give the independent judgment on whether the safety requirements have truly been met, whether the system is genuinely fit for purpose before it carries passengers or freight.
And their competence requirements must be pretty demanding.
Intense is the word. They need to be suitably qualified, yes, but also deeply experienced in system safety. An engineering degree is highly desirable. It gives them that analytical grounding.
And technically,
High technical competence is a must. Things like systems engineering, RAM's reliability, availability, maintainability, safety management. But let's talk about that independence piece again. That's absolutely core to the ISA role.
right. If they're independent, how do they stay objective but still understand enough about the project's context? Isn't there a risk of being too detached or maybe getting drawn into project pressures?
It's a very fine balance. The ISA's credibility, their competence in the role, hinges on their ability to remain outside those internal project pressures, budget, schedule, you name it.
So structurally separate.
Financially and structurally separate from the delivery team. Their judgment has to be based purely on the evidence in the safety case, full stop.
But they still need to understand the system.
Absolutely. So often, the ISA team will include senior people who have prior design or operational experience, so they understand the context. But crucially, they're currently working within an external body or a completely segregated internal safety assurance function. Their competence isn't just technical, it's ethical. It's having the backbone to say no if the evidence isn't there, regardless of the consequences for the project timeline.
Holding the line, basically.
Holding the line, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, when we talk about verifying all this competence, making sure it's enforced, we inevitably hit the standards. You mentioned the Senelec EN5012X series being pretty much the global benchmark.
Yeah, they really are foundational, especially in Europe, but adopted as best practice almost everywhere. These aren't just technical specs for bits of kit. They lay out the processes, the management requirements. And built into all of that is the need for competent people at every single step.
So let's break down the key ones, EN50126 first.
Right, EN50126. This one covers the whole RAM's life cycle: reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety. It mandates processes, often following a V model for development.
And competence fits in how?
It's woven through that entire V. For instance, the people defining the system requirements at the start. They need to be competent in understanding operational needs and doing risk assessments. The people doing the testing at the end. Competent in validation techniques and test safety. The standard demands that competence is defined, allocated, and proven for each phase. You can't move forward without the right expertise in place.
Okay, so it links specific tasks to specific human capabilities all the way through. What about EN50128?
50128 is hugely important now with modern railways. It's all about software safety, control systems, protection systems, signaling, automatic train operation. It's driven by code.
So this requires a very specific type of competence.
Extremely specific software safety engineers. And their competence isn't just can they code, it's much deeper. Do they understand formal methods for proving software correctness, verification techniques, software-specific failure modes? Can they design code that's inherently robust, testable, auditable, and safe against known vulnerabilities? It's a specialized field.
And EN50129, that sort of ties it together for the final sign-off.
Exactly. 50129 deals with the safety case. That's the big document, proving the system is safe, and also hardware safety management. It dictates what needs to be in the safety case, how it should be structured, the criteria for acceptance.
And competence is part of that evidence.
A critical part. The safety case must document the organizational structure and detail the competence of the personnel involved in designing, building, testing, and maintaining the system. The people assessing that safety case, they're evaluating not just the technical arguments, but also the credibility of the competence management processes behind it all.
Now, running through all these standards are the safety integrity levels, SILs, SI1 up to SIL4. How do they affect these competence demands?
SILs basically set the level of rigor required. They're based on the potential consequences of failure. If a system is SIL4, think catastrophic failure, like a collision control system, the standards demand much, much greater independence and more stringent competence verification.
Meaning more checks, more independent eyes.
Yes. Often mandatory independent assessments at multiple key points in the project. You need deeper expertise, perhaps very specialized training, and undeniable proof that the assessors are separate from the developers. For a lower SIL system, maybe an internal review by a competent person suffices. Higher SIL equals higher stakes, demanding higher levels of proven competence and independence.
And this framework isn't just rail specific, is it? There's a foundational standard, IEC 61508.
That's right. IEC 61508 is the parent standard, if you like, for functional safety across many industries dealing with electrical, electronic, and programmable systems. For us, Part 1, Clause 6 is absolutely key
Why Clause 6?
because it explicitly mandates competence management for everyone involved in the functional safety lifecycle. From the person writing the initial safety requirements right through to the technician maintaining the system years later, everyone needs competence relevant to their specific tasks.
And what's the absolute crunch point in 61508 that safety professionals really need to focus on?
It boils down to one phrase: documented objective evidence.
Documented objective evidence.
This is where things can fall apart. It's not good enough to just say, oh yeah, we hire good people, or he's got 20 years experience. You must be able to demonstrate competence through records, through proof.
What kind of proof are we talking about?
It covers everything. Technical knowledge like certificates, degrees, practical experience validated work logs, project histories, understanding of safety principles, maybe test results from training, and crucially, evidence of ongoing professional development and regular reassessment. It all needs to be documented and auditable.
Can you give me an example? Say, for a junior engineer working on a SI3 signaling system, what would that evidence look like?
Okay, for that junior engineer, the evidence file might contain, say, the formal sign-off from their senior lead confirming they successfully completed a specific preliminary hazard analysis using the approved method. It would also need records of their training on the relevant SENLEC standards, maybe results from aptitude tests assessing those non-technical skills we'll talk about, and definitely logs of periodic reviews or assessments, perhaps using scenario-based questions to check their judgment.
And if that paperwork isn't there or isn't right,
Then the safety case for that system has a serious hole in it. From a regulator's perspective, if you can't prove the competence, it doesn't exist.
okay, we've got the legal side, the standards. How do operators actually make this happen day to day? You mentioned this 5-phase competence management cycle.
Right, the CMS cycle. It's the blueprint regulators like to see. It ensures competence isn't just achieved once, but actively managed and maintained. It's a continuous loop.
So phase 1, establish requirements. Where does that begin?
Always starts with risk. The organization has to map out all its activities that could impact safety. Train driving, signaling, maintaining the track, protecting workers, everything.
And then,
The crucial step is identifying exactly where human competence is relied upon to control a risk. If a safety barrier depends on a person following a procedure correctly, you need to define precisely what competence is required to execute that procedure flawlessly every time. Make it specific, make it measurable.
okay, risks identified, competence needs mapped. Then phase 2, design the system. This is about setting the standards.
Exactly. This is where you nail down the detailed, standardized requirements for each role. What qualifications are needed? What specific knowledge must they have? What level of experience? But the really good systems go further.
How so?
They validate these standards rigorously, and they explicitly embed non-technical skills NTS into them.
NTS. Okay, these aren't the technical skills, but things like communication.
Precisely, often called soft skills, but they are absolutely hard requirements in safety. We're talking about communication, clear, unambiguous language, especially under pressure. Situational awareness, really understanding what's going on around you. Decision-making, making sound calls, often with incomplete information. And teamwork.
Can you give an example of why NTS are so vital?
Think about a signaler. They might have perfect technical knowledge of the interlocking system, but if they fail to maintain situational awareness, maybe they lose track of where a work crew is on the line, that technical knowledge becomes useless, even dangerous.
So how do you embed these NTS into standards? It sounds subjective.
You use validated behavioral markers. You define what good communication looks like in that specific role. For example, does the person consistently use standard protocols like phonetic alphabet? Do they effectively challenge instructions they believe are unsafe? You make the behaviors observable and measurable.
Okay, that makes sense. Which leads us to phase 3. Implement the system. Training and selection. Rail is known for long training periods, right?
Immense investment, yes.
Yeah.
And necessarily so. For high-stakes roles like drivers or specialized maintenance techs, training can take many, many months. Often, you need significant prior railway experience even before you start the specific training pathway for, say, driving.
Why so long?
Because you simply cannot rush the development of judgment and deep system familiarity. Lives depend on it. It's a massive commitment for the organization.
Are there ways to make this training more efficient or effective, especially for getting people experience with rare events?
Absolutely. Technology is a huge help here. High-fidelity simulators are crucial. Train driving simulators, maintenance simulators using virtual reality.
VR, how's
Yeah.
that use?
VR allows you to put trainees into incredibly realistic scenarios, maybe dealing with a major equipment failure or an emergency evacuation, or navigating a complex track layout in bad weather, things that are too dangerous or impractical to practice live. It accelerates skill acquisition and, importantly, tests those NTS under simulated pressure.
That's clever. Now, there's a statistic often mentioned that staff with less than 2 years experience are at higher risk. How does the CMS cycle address that?
That statistic is a stark reminder of the experience gap. Newer staff haven't built up that intuitive pattern recognition yet. They might be less confident challenging things. The CMS tackles this through managed progression.
Meaning close supervision.
Yes, strict supervision protocols,
Yeah.
often formal probationary periods, and more frequent targeted assessments, focusing on practical judgment during those critical first couple of years. You actively manage their integration into complex, real-world operations.
Okay, brings us to the final stages. Phase 4, monitor and maintain, and Phase 5, verify and review. This is the continuous part.
Exactly. Competence isn't permanent. It can fade if not used or updated. Phase 4 is about ongoing checks, performance monitoring, regular reassessments, refresher training, especially for skills used infrequently.
And Phase 5 is the audit trail.
Verification, yes. Comprehensive record keeping. Every assessment, qualification, training course, significant piece of experience, it all needs to be logged and auditable.
For a big operator with thousands of staff, that sounds like an administrative mountain if it's all on paper.
It used to be a nightmare, which is why modern digital competence management systems are essential now.
Software platforms.
Yes, centralized systems that hold all the documentation, link training records to the required standards for each role, track expiry dates, flag people due for reassessment. It transforms efficiency and makes audits, frankly, manageable. You go from digging through filing cabinets to pulling up verified digital records in seconds.
Right, so the theory and the process sound robust. But let's talk reality. When these systems fail, the consequences are severe. We have some case studies. The Wallen derailment in Australia 2020, that was tragic.
It was. 2 rail workers killed. And it's a stark example because the root cause wasn't a mechanical failure of the train. It was a breakdown in competence management, specifically around communication.
The train was going too fast through a turnout, wasn't it?
Yes, excessive speed. But why? The investigation found there was an improvised, temporary safe working arrangement in place. Maybe a temporary speed restriction or tracked configuration change.
And the driver didn't know.
The driver was apparently unaware of the crucial up-to-the-minute changes. The system for communicating safety-critical operational updates failed. Even though the driver was experienced, the system failed to ensure his competence at that specific moment included the latest safety notice. It was a failure in managing dynamic information.
A classic non-technical skill failure, but within the management system itself.
Exactly.
So the lesson isn't just about initial training. It's about the system ensuring that critical, real-time information reliably reaches and is understood by everyone who needs it, no matter how experienced they are.
Precisely. Competence has to be current, context-specific.
Yeah. Okay, second case. The Whyalla runaway incident. Also in Australia, 2019. This sounds like a different kind of competence gap, more technical.
Yes, this one highlights a gap in deep technical knowledge, especially when things go wrong. A train rolled away uncontrolled for about 6 kilometers.
Why?
Brakes failed.
An air leak in the pneumatic control unit caused the brakes to gradually release. But the critical failure happened when the driver tried to regain control after switching from remote back to manual operation. They lacked specific knowledge about a flow monitor setting within the braking system. They didn't understand a crucial detail of how that complex system worked in that degraded state.
So they were competent for normal driving, but not for diagnosing and managing this specific complex failure.
That's what it points to. Their training likely covered standard procedures perfectly, but maybe not the deep interactions between subsystems during failures, especially during that tricky transition between control modes.
As systems get more complex, the competence needs to get deeper. You need people who understand how things fail, not just how they operate normally. You need diagnosticians, not just button pushers.
Let's switch to a positive example. Network Rail in the UK. They faced safety issues with track workers and made a big change.
Yes, this is a good example of addressing the system that supports competence. Network Rail had persistent issues, tragic fatalities even, among track workers. One major contributing factor was the information system they used.
The safe work packs.
Right, these huge paper-based documents, sometimes 60-plus pages. Workers were trying to digest and apply this complex information in difficult environments, maybe at night, in bad weather, under time pressure. The system itself was making it hard for competent people to work safely.
So the system was almost undermining competence.
In effect, yes. Their solution was introducing a digital platform, RailHub. It provided a single, easily accessible source of truth for safety information, available on tablets, even offline. Real-time risk advice, much clearer presentation.
Replacing the paper mountain with a focused tool. And the insight from that.
It showed that technology can be a powerful enabler of competence. The workers likely were competent, but the old system hindered them. The new digital tool allowed them to apply their knowledge and judgment effectively in the field. It led to a significant drop in safety errors. The lesson: competence is vital, but the organizational system has to support people in exercising it.
Okay, looking forward now. The rail industry isn't static. There are some big challenges looming that directly impact competence management. First, the skills crisis or demographic shift.
It's a huge issue globally. We're looking at potentially over 20% of the experienced rail workforce retiring within the next 5 to 10 years in many places.
That's a massive brain drain.
It's decades of embedded knowledge, operational judgment, that deep experience-based competence walking out the door. It puts enormous pressure on the industry to speed up competence development for new people and maybe formalize knowledge capture better rather than just relying on time served.
And this challenge is colliding with another trend: automation. We think automation makes things safer, reduces human error, but there's a paradox.
The automation paradox, yes. It's counterintuitive. Automation does eliminate many routine human errors, making systems generally more reliable. That's the upside.
The downside.
The downside is that when these highly reliable automated systems do fail, they often fail in complex, unexpected ways that aren't in the standard operating manual. The system might degrade in a way designers didn't fully anticipate.
And the human operator gets thrown into the deep end.
Precisely. They suddenly have to switch from passively monitoring a system that normally runs itself to actively diagnosing a complex, degraded state, maybe intervening manually under immense pressure with incomplete information.
So they need skills they barely ever use, but when they need them, the stakes are incredibly high.
Exactly. The required competence shifts. It's less about following procedure A, B, C, and more about high-level problem solving, understanding the automation's logic, interpreting its data, knowing its failure modes. It's a very different skill set.
Which is driving this shift towards resilience-based competence.
Yes, moving beyond just procedural compliance.
How does resilience-based competence differ from the traditional approach?
The traditional approach often focused heavily on knowing the established procedures, relying on years of experience to handle the gaps or unexpected stuff. Resilience-based competence is more about building deep, fundamental understanding and explicitly training people for the unpredictable.
Okay, how do you train for the unpredictable? What are the principles?
There are sort of 4 key shifts. First, learning based on underlying competencies. Don't just teach the steps. Teach the why. Understand the physics, the engineering principles behind the system.
Deeper knowledge.
Second, using data to understand training needs. Analyze operational data, near misses, simulated performance. Find out where the real performance gaps are. Don't just guess. Make training evidence-based.
Makes sense.
Third, focusing training on those identified needs. Move away from generic pick-box refresher courses and target the specific weaknesses or scenarios the data points to. Make it relevant. And the fourth one.
This is perhaps most interesting. Learning from positive performance. Don't just study failures. Study when things go right despite challenges. What did that crew do? What made that team resilient in handling that unexpected event? Identify those successful, resilient behaviors and train for them. Learn from success, not just failure.
That's a fascinating shift. The industry also seems to have ongoing debates about how best to structure things. One is independence versus integration for safety assurance teams.
Ah, yes, the classic tension. Should safety assurance be completely separate, walled off to avoid any conflicts of interest with project delivery? That's the independence argument, ensures objectivity,
Versus.
versus the integration argument, which says if safety people are embedded within the project teams, they have much better contextual understanding, they can spot risks earlier, be more proactive.
So objectivity versus context. What's the practical answer?
Most mature organizations land on a blended multi-level approach. You need assurance at different stages.
Like layers. Kind of. Level 1 might be integrated safety input within the design team itself, providing that context. Level 2 is a formal, independent review, often by a dedicated internal safety unit or an external ISA, providing the objective scrutiny. And Level 3 is the final check and acceptance by the operator, the RTO, doing their own due diligence. You get the benefits of both context and independence.
Okay. The other big debate, education versus experience. The degree versus decades on the job, which is more valuable.
Oh, this one can get quite heated. Both sides have valid points, historically. Formal education, an engineering degree, say, gives you the analytical tools, the language of risk, the ability to model complex systems. It's essential for the technical rigor.
And experience.
Experience builds that intuitive judgment, the gut feel, the immediate situational awareness. It gives you the pattern recognition to troubleshoot effectively based on seeing similar things or subtle signs over many years.
So it's not really either.
Not at all. Neither is sufficient on its own. True competence needs both. It's the structured thinking from education combined with the practical wisdom of experience.
You need the theory to do the analysis and the experience to know when the real world isn't matching the theory.
Perfectly put. The ideal safety professional today, and certainly tomorrow, needs that blend. Strong engineering fundamentals, deep practical exposure, and a commitment to continuous learning throughout their career.
All right, let's make this really practical for our listeners, especially those starting out. Engineering students, early career folks. What essential skills should they be actively developing right now to build that competence portfolio?
Okay, number 1, nail the technical must-haves. You absolutely need a solid grasp of systems engineering principles, how complex systems are designed, built, integrated, and managed over their life.
What else technical?
Get deep into RAMS management. Learn the methodologies, how to do a preliminary hazard analysis, PHA, fault tree analysis, FTA, FG. Understand the standards, really read and digest things like EN 50126, IEC 61508. Not just know they exist, know how they apply in practice.
Okay, technical foundations. What about those non-technical skills, the NTS? How do you actively develop those?
You have to practice them deliberately. Situational awareness. Constantly ask yourself, what if? Train yourself to look beyond the immediate task, anticipate potential issues. Decision-making. Learn structured decision-making techniques, especially for when you have limited time or information. Practice scenarios, even mentally.
And communication, teamwork.
Crucial.
Yeah.
Practice clear, concise communication. Use standard terminology, learn active listening. For teamwork, understand different roles and responsibilities. Be reliable. Be willing to speak up if you see something unsafe. Seek feedback on these skills. They are assessed now. They are part of your formal competence.
Let's think about career progression, maybe like a marathon. How does someone build this competence over, say, the first decade?
Good analogy. The foundation years, 0-2, are about learning and absorbing. Finish your degree or grad program. Aim for a role where you are explicitly supervised, like a junior SSA practitioner. Your goal is understanding the processes, the CMS, and meticulously documenting everything you do, every review you receive. Be a sponge.
Okay, years A2, sponge mode under supervision. Then maybe years 5-10, competent practitioner.
Right. Now you're building depth and starting to take more responsibility. You should be able to competently lead hazard workshops, maybe draft safety reports still under review, probably. But you're doing the core work.
Time for specialization.
Definitely. This is the time to pursue more specialized training or certifications. Maybe something like the TÜV Rheinland Rail Safety Assurance Professional Qualification, focusing on signaling or rolling stock or whatever your area is. You're moving from knowing the rules to exercising informed judgment.
And beyond that, senior expert, 10+ years.
Now you're likely moving into roles with significant accountability. Maybe pursuing full ISA qualification. You should be mentoring junior staff, contributing to improving the CMS, perhaps even getting involved in industry working groups developing standards. Your competence is demonstrated by a track record of sound judgment on complex projects.
What are some common pitfalls that early career professionals should really try to avoid on this journey?
Okay, mistake number 1. Assuming your qualification equals competence. big mistake. The degree gets you in the door, but competence is qualification plus validated experience plus ongoing development. Never stop learning or assume you know it all because you have the certificate.
Good one. Mistake number 2.
Neglecting non-technical skills, thinking they're soft or secondary. They're not. Your brilliant technical analysis is useless if you can't communicate it clearly, or if you don't work well with the operations team, or if you lack the situational awareness to see the bigger picture. Take NTS development seriously. Ask for feedback.
And a third mistake, related to what the regulators demand.
Absolutely. Underestimating the documentation. If you did safety-critical work, but there's no clear auditable record of it, or of the competence verification for it, then for assurance purposes, it might as well not have happened. Get disciplined about record-keeping from day one. Understand your organization's CMS and follow it meticulously. Document your assessments, your reviews, your experience. If it's not documented, you can't prove it.
Embrace the bureaucracy almost.
Well, embrace the evidence. Think of it as proving your professionalism. Always seek review for your safety judgments, and make sure it's recorded.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive really hammers home that competence in rail safety isn't just a personal attribute. It's systematic, it's continuous, it's an organizational responsibility.
Absolutely. It's a duty of care, built on
Yeah.
technical skill, yes, but also adaptive judgment, ethical behavior, and rigorous, verifiable processes. It has to be maintained constantly.
And as you said, the future demands even more, with automation changing the game.
That continuous, verifiable competence becomes the safety net. And the nature of that competence is shifting. We're moving beyond just training people to follow procedures for known situations.
Because of that automation paradox, your real value might increasingly lie in your ability to handle the unexpected, the unforeseeable.
Exactly. Can you stay calm when the automation fails? Can you diagnose a complex problem under pressure? Can you take effective manual control of a degraded system? That requires deep understanding, resilience, judgment.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening, especially those building their careers, is this. How are you actively training not just your procedural knowledge, but that deeper underlying judgment and resilience? The very skills that complex automated systems might ultimately rely on when things go wrong.
That's the challenge. Invest in both sides,
Mhm.
the technical depth and the human factors, the NTS, the resilience, because at the end of the day, the safety of the railway depends on that holistic, demonstrable.
Thanks for listening to Safe Tracks, the Systems Safety Assurance podcast. Here, we talk all about how safety assurance keeps our railways running safely, smoothly, and reliably every single day. If you're curious about RAM management, RAM analysis, and how reliability is actually calculated, check out the RAMs Ready podcast playlist on this channel. It's packed with great insights. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you'll know the moment a new episode is out. Until next time, stay safe, stay assured.